Proteus is an amazing Doom-like game that I'm sure you have missed. It has been almost 3 entire years since the last relevant Doom content released, and it does not seem like we will hear anything about their new Doom projects anytime soon. So in the meantime, we have to look to other games to get the same satisfaction again, and what better game to do so than Proteus? If you have clicked on this video, you most likely don't know what Prodeus is. Well, Prodeus is a crowd-funded indie retro shooter developed by Bounding Box Software Incorporated, god what a name, and published by Humble Games with a 1.0 release in 2022, and it managed to recapture the feeling of Doom Eternal almost down to a T. It belongs to the boomer shooter genre, which in the past has been used as a more flippant or casual way to describe games that looked and played like old school Doom or Wolfenstein games, for example. Recently, boomer shooters have even been accepted as an official genre of games by Steam, even creating a store page for it. But what is a boomer shooter? In short, a boomer shooter is a first-person shooter with a retro look, fast-paced gameplay, staggering difficulty, lots and lots of gore, and is very light on the story. Speaking of which, why is Mr. Diaz acting like an American on Black Friday? I don't know, do you know? Do the devs know? Who the hell knows? It does not matter. All we know is that the vessel, as he's called, wants to drop a 50 petabyte zip bomb into the Proteans network and will not be stopped by anyone. So, who are the Proteans, or Proteus as they are also called? They are a race of super AI who all follow this one ideology called the Order, where everything needs to fit the perfect order, and if it doesn't, it needs to be cut out of the equation. They reside in a higher dimension that in itself also adheres to the order, as seen by it morphing around you as you traverse through it. But the Proteus aren't the only ones you fight in this game. As with everything, there's always an opposite. The yin and the yang, the good and the bad, a good PC port and whatever the fuck we had to deal with for the longest time. Order and chaos. Chaos is honestly just there. The only reason they were involved in your conflict against the Proteus is because some dingus researchers on an asteroid decided to fiddle with dimensional portals, weren't able to contain the unending chaos that was unleashed, and just so happened to be in the exact location you were transported to while escaping from the Proteus dimension. Chaos is the opposite of the Proteus in every way. They're fleshy, kinda weak, spread chaos, and they have variety. But more on that later. First, we have to talk about where this carnage takes place. You start the game trapped in what seems to be a prison vessel up in orbit. Something causes the vessel to be damaged and you're able to stroll out of your holding cell, realizing that everyone is dead. So, just like any good prisoner, you take the first chance you get to get the fuck out of there. How do you do this? By using a rune, of course. Duh. And after a good amount of foreshadowing, the rune sends you to the Proteus dimension. The stay there is short-lived, as you do not pass the vibe check and get sent to the asteroid facility, where you find it abandoned of any and all human life except for their shambling corpses. This is where the forces of chaos first got a foothold into our dimension. Here you travel across research facilities set into chasms that stretch for tens of kilometers, the magma-flooded remains of the third impact, the living quarters of the people who worked there, and acid-filled valleys. The asteroid base maps also have a second iteration in which certain missions get a frosty overhaul, but we will get to those later. It is actually quite amazing how much mileage they get out of this map. The levels change it up enough and frequently enough for the somewhat same looking architecture to never get old. In classic boomer shooter fashion, you will find your health, armor, weapon and ammo pickups in these maps as well. They even have time trials here that aren't a pain in the ass, like how they are in most games. If you do them quickly, you'll be rewarded with ore, an in-game currency to purchase unique weapons or permanent upgrades for your kit. And if you do decide to take your time, you will also be rewarded by finding even more ore in those same time trials by solving small puzzles. So no matter how you go about them, if you put in either kind of effort, you will get rewarded. But finding the ore is not always easy. See, the maps in boomer shooters are always mazes. Even if you have the auto map, an item that will reveal the entire map to you, the map will simply not fit on your screen. And even if you zoom out enough for it to fit on the screen, the map's corridors are so interwoven and seemingly have no beginning or end that it won't help you anyway. After you slaughter your way through the research facilities, you find a portal that allows you to return to the Proteus Dimension, a dimension that in itself follows the ideology of the Proteus. It is a cold machine world constantly reshaping itself to fit a predetermined perfect permutation, but even in a dimension where everything's controlled by the Proteus, things don't entirely make sense. Like, for example, why is there an ocean made of what seems to be blood? This question and many more aren't never answered. They aren't supposed to be answered. But there's one that is answered. What happens when, on your path for revenge, you decide to let the enemy of your enemy invade their entire dimension and give them the upper hand?
Chaos.
Chaos will simply chaos all over the place. That is what happens. The Proteus, having been weakened by your rampage, are now on the verge of being overrun by the chaos that you let in, and so you need to fight your way into the heart of hell and stop them from ruining your quest for vengeance. So you board a spaceship and blast your way back into the human dimension, which is a lot cooler now due to the coolest enemy in the game gunning it for your puckered butthole. After panicking your way through the remaining enemies, you finally manage to enter the Chaos's home turf. Underneath the hateful eye's glare, you see a sprawling city made of unholy cathedrals that cut off any possible escape route if you were to look for one, and monoliths made out of flesh and bone reaching to the skies. This is the domain of chaos. Sadly, there's not much to say about this, as the Chaos Dimension only really exists for 2 missions, one of which confines you to a single room. And this is where the story ends, for now. And as this is their home turf, they obviously get bonuses. From the simplest shambling zombie all the way up to the hunter. In this case they gain a shield that just takes a few extra shots to take off. But see, these 2 levels really highlight an issue with this game. It has a pretty, I would say, almost anemic enemy roster, with there only being 16 unique enemy units and 5 slightly altered enemy units. How's this highlighted? Well, in the final 2 levels you don't meet a single new enemy except for the final boss. And of those 16 unique enemies, as I had mentioned earlier, only 3 are Proteus enemies, which is honestly a bit painful. But let's keep the criticisms for later. For now, let's just talk about who you will be fighting in this game. And for the sake of brevity, I will group the enemies together. For the simple fodder enemies, we have the regular zombie, shotgun zombie, and fiend. They're all generally not too fast and don't deal too much damage, the fiend being the most dangerous as it can cast fireballs. They can get dangerous though if suppressing enemies appear to pin you down, specifically the sniper zombie and the minigun zombie. Both are tankier than they look, and both will absolutely tank your health if you don't keep an eye out for them. Especially the sniper zombie is a pain, as they will be so far away that you either need to rush towards them while avoiding getting hit, or trying to hit the few pixels of red that indicate their positions. Quite funnily enough, the normal combat units are 2 aerial units and a ground unit. The Bloater and the Void Reaper are the most common enemies, I think, that will pepper you from afar with different kind of projectiles, and while the Bloater shoots plasma at you, the Void Reaper will spawn a Skullfish, which is a different type of enemy, to track you down and explode in your face. And on the other hand, the Lunger will just bullrush you. Think Pinky Demon from Doom. The Skullfish are part of what I would call sacrificial enemies. The others being the Hazmat Zombie and the Crawler. All 3 of which explode, but the Crawler and Zombie will leave behind a damaging pool of goop. It is not too much damage, but it is definitely noticeable. And here is where the true threats of the game will appear. From mini bosses to actual bosses. There aren't many, but the ones that are there will demand your full attention. That's a lie. Just use a rocket launcher on them. Only 2 of these really require any kind of strategy that does not involve same-day shipping of rockets into their faces. Those being the Hunter and the Cryomancer. Why? Well, the Hunter is fought in a smaller room where the splash damage may kill you before he does, and the Cryomancer is simply too quick to be easily hit by rockets. Everybody else though? Rocket launcher. So, let's start with the Slayer. The Slayer is a floating boss that will shoot waves of fire at you that will track ever so slightly. Solution? rockets. The Harbinger is a mini-boss that can turn non-zombie Chaos units into Proteus units. Remember those 5 slightly altered units I mentioned earlier? Here they are. It can also shoot projectiles at you. You know what it can't do? Survive the fucking rocket launcher. And lastly, there's the Phantom. Just rocket launcher it. Alright, it can go invisible, but can it hide from the blast radius? Didn't fucking think so. I swear, if the Cryomancer was any slower and the Hunter fight was set in a bigger room, you could legit just use the rocket launcher for all of them, and not even activate a single brain cell if you wanted to. But thankfully, here we are intellectuals, so we also use the other guns. Proteus has 3 options for each ammo type, with 2 exceptions. For bullets, you have the pistol, which can burst fire, the shredders, which are dual SMGs, and the minigun, which is just a minigun. For shotgun ammo types, you have the regular shotgun, which you can charge to shoot a singular shot which deals tick damage, the super shotgun, which is a double barrel shotgun with 2 more barrels strapped to it so it can shotgun even harder, and the auto shotgun with a pretty useless secondary mode. Then there are the explosive weapons, of which really only the rocket launcher matters, so ignore the rest. Hey, Future Hawks here. Just ignore what I just said about the rocket launcher being the only viable option, because sure, the grenade launcher is not the best, but the Swarmer quite literally exists. The Swarmer being a rocket launcher that shoots up to 6 rockets to up to 6 different enemies, depending on if you use the alternative fire, and it has 2 salvos in the mag. So at all times, you can shoot 12 micro rockets in very quick succession, with a minimal difference in damage. So not only is the Swarmer faster, it has more shots, it can auto-aim, and you can reload it faster. I don't know how I forgot how good this thing is while I wrote that script. Maybe because I kept using the regular rocket launcher, because I hadn't bought the Swarmer at certain stages of the game, but good lord. That thing fucks, and it fucks hard. Alright, back to past Hawks. Plasma ammo only has the plasma rifle, even though the trailer showed a different weapon which was to be called the Plexus. Don't know what happened to that one. And finally, for the Chaos ammo type, you have the Arc Rail, which is both a sniper and a crowd control gun, and the Mammoth, which is like the holy grail of hand cannons. This monstrous thing shoots pentagrams and pierces targets. This thing is the only thing you need to not just kill an enemy, but delete their very code from the game. And while some of the weapons listed can be found while playing the game, others need to be bought for ore in the in-game shop. This shop also allows you to buy a permanent double jump or dash upgrade a la Doom Eternal. And while some of the bought weapons may be better, it is truly great to see all guns not only have their own role, but are also all viable within their own weapon category. So the regular shotgun, for example, is still a viable option for the final level. And if the guns don't work out, or you run out of ammo, just fucking punch them to death, because which weapons could be any better than the 2 guns that your creator gave you? All of this carnage is only enhanced by the absolutely banger OST that accompanies this game. The developer studio even managed to get Andrew Hulsholt, I don't know how to pronounce his name, to work on this game. You know, the guy behind the OST for both Doom Eternal DLCs? How such a fresh and new to the industry team managed to get Andrew fucking Hulsholt to work on this game is beyond me, but oh my god, is it worth it. And as Proteus is their first game in their game dev career, it is not without its issues. But let me be clear, this is their first game, and thus a lot of these issues should be granted some leniency. No one doing something for the first time will ever have a glowing first attempt. I should know. So, with that disclaimer out of the way, the game is a little weirdly balanced. And not in a weapon don't deal enough damage kind of way. See, the human facility maps are like 50% of the game. Sure, they change it up quite a lot, but I would have loved to see more of the Proteus Dimension. Hell, I would have loved to see more of the Chaos Dimension. It is literally just 2 levels. And I'm also not just saying add more levels, because that will be an issue too. Because I think this game is a bit too long as well, as the lack of a wider variety of enemies which are pitted against you really becomes painfully apparent near the halfway point for the Chaos faction, and I mean, from the get-go for the Proteus enemies, as there's only 3 unique Proteus enemies. Sure, the 5 Pro Chaos enemies, as they're called, added to the Proteus, but they're just buffed versions of the Chaos enemies. And while I know that the game and the genre as a whole is not about the story, Prodeus has a really jarring ending. I won't spoil too much, but after you beat the final boss, you're essentially just left with a cliffhanger, and a text display saying "shit's fucked." And again, this is Bounding Box Software's first game, at the very least from what I could find. So these points should merely be seen as minor nitpicks. Hell, if you just want to rip and tear, half of my gripes already fall away. And if you don't mind the story just ending on a weird cliffhanger, that point can also be ignored. Hey, Futurox here, with the thing that I forgot to mention. As you can see, the game looks pretty unique, especially the enemies. That is because they have sprites that aren't just 2D that constantly face you. In fact, the sprites change depending on which angle you're looking at them from. And from what I can remember, that is because those 3D looking sprites are actually made by using a proper 3D model that was overlaid with a filter that turns those 3D models into sprites. In this case, I think it was specifically 8 different sprites, because the game looks at like the 8 different angles where you can look at them from. And yeah, that's how they look like that. You can notice that especially if you go into the former half of the video where I still use the sprites, and the latter half of the video where I start using the 3D models. It's actually quite cool to look at how the models look like when they are unsprited, I suppose. And I wish there was an option for that as well for, you know, the player character, since I do know for a fact that there are proper non-sprite looking models in the files for the weapons. Somebody found them and actually put them in the game. But there's no native option for that in the menu. So I would like for, you know, the development studio to actually put that in the game, because it would be pretty cool, let's be honest. Overall, Proteus is an amazingly polished game. Has an insane amount of features that I did not even mention, such as the game's map editor, which allows you to create endless content, or the character customization, allowing you to give your vessel a little individuality, and so much more. And with an expansion coming in the future, which seems to be adding a grappling hook, Prodeus may as well be just the best truly indie shooter I have played in years.